I'm Praful Nankia. Raven Dialogues is a series of conversations celebrating entrepreneurship and unique thinking. Over the next few months, we shall be inviting a number of entrepreneurs and professionals who have literally walked the talk in terms of their faith and strong convictions in their ideas. During the course of these conversations, we shall hear about their experiences and learnings in their entrepreneurial journeys. And now I would like to introduce our guest for today, Varun Dhamija, founder Sukiru. Varun is an alumnus of the Indian School of Business. Post his MBA, he worked for more than a decade with Pearson and headed their professional learning programs division. Prior to founding Sukiru, Varun was the Chief Strategy Officer at Times Professional Learning. Varun, welcome to Raven Dialogues.
Thanks, Praful. Great to be here.
Yes, we are. It's a pleasure to have you on this program. So, Varun, why don't you tell us a little bit about Sukiru before we kind of dive a little deeper into your journey?
Sure, absolutely. So Sukiru is a career navigation platform, and we essentially, think of ourselves as Google Maps of careers, and we help working professionals get from point A to point B.
All right.
And essentially, it reminds me of that campaign that Google Maps did so many years ago, right? It was called #Look Before You Leave, so that you don't get stuck in traffic, take the faster route, and so on. And when I came up with the idea of Sukiru, I thought this positioning is the best because in all our careers, right, we all want a trouble-free route. We want to reach our next destination quicker, faster, easier, and so on. And hopefully at some point, we can also tell people where they could go, right? What the next destination could be. That's a future goal.
Interesting. So how does this work? Is it like a career coach? I mean, what does Sukiru do?
So it's a platform play. We have a couple of AI-driven tools, and at the core of it are data and insights, because we've been able to curate a lot of data, and we at least know, what path have people taken, where they've been, and fundamentally, right, for working professionals, we think it's the 3E approach. So essentially, where we all are, it's a combination of three things. One is the education, where we did it, what did we study, when did we study, and so on. The second is experience, which means, where we work, which kind of company, what role, when, what sort of, skills did we build, what competencies did we display back then, how relevant are they? And the third E is exposure. So whether, we have done it only in an Indian context or, done it in a global context, travel around the world, led teams from outside, participated in a couple of projects and so on. So all these three combined are sort of, a great indicator to, is somebody a good fit to, get onto a point. And if not, then our goal is to help them fill those gaps by giving them the right recommendations.
All right. So when you say fill in those gaps, so Sukiru also offers programs or certifications?
So not yet, but one of our goals is to become a learning pathway or a learning journey provider. Though we don't want to sort of create our own content or courses, because there is no dearth of good content and courses out there. So we are building a skills profile. Sukiru, by the way, means skills, and essentially we want to guide people to saying, here are the skills you miss, and you add them to either skills I want to explore or skills I want to build bucket, and that's when we can recommend them either free or paid courses to build those skills.
Understood. Interesting. So since when have you been thinking about Sukiru?
Well, I would say all my life, but
no, I mean, I'm very serious because as a professional working, there are KRAs and deadlines. When did you get time to start even thinking or working on this?
Yeah, interestingly, the KRAs and deadlines and metrics had a lot to do with this. And just to give you a little bit of background, I have led, 3 different education businesses and I've been on both the good and the bad side. Once where we had hit the flywheel in this tech business, and we were really successful. So our results spoke for themselves, and a lot more students would come in because our results spoke for themselves. So we had the perfect flywheel, and our cost of acquisition was very low. So CAC, was 2% of revenue. It was like a dream come true. And then I've been on, the worst sides of it, where in the funnel, we ended up paying a lot more money to Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the digital advertisers much more than we earned ourselves. And that got me thinking that how do I sort of break out of this rut where every day there is new competition, people competing with you on the same keywords, and the only sort of entry barrier is how much capital do you have. And last couple of years, as you know, with the industry and particularly tech being awash with capital, that entry barrier also reduced. So that got me thinking in saying, there's an issue both sides. Of course, for providers like us, what I used to be, there was this issue of P&L, but I dug deeper and I figured that for the learner, the issue is a lot bigger, and it is of a discovery and trust. Praful, let me ask you, have you ever inquired for any online course?
Yes. There was a phase in my life when I thought I should, and I think it got triggered during the lockdown when there was nothing to do, a long unpaid holiday. So yes, that's when I started thinking that, okay, maybe I can learn something.
And did you inquire with one provider or more than one?
So I looked at the usual suspects, the online suspects. My experience was I did not like a lot of it because it was just canned content. I somehow felt that there was not much of engagement. I felt maybe I will learn a lot more, probably reading a book on that subject, or to my surprise, YouTube, in fact, turns out to be a great provider of content.
Right. So bang on, right? I think the troubles the industry faces are that when you start at the very top, right, in that funnel, and I call that funnel of lifelong learners, right? It's like asking people, do you like to remain fit? Of course, yes. Did you exercise twice last week? Well, I've been busy. and, and that's the difference between, a lifelong learner and an active learner. And the difference, by the way, is, 100 to 35.
Okay.
Right. Even in those 35, and I'm assuming you were part of that 35, there's a big issue of preferences. I want something which is, short, maybe a week long, maybe a month long, and not always, 6, 9, 12 months long. I want the intensity to be as hard as it gets. You only live once. Or, hey, I have so many other things to do. Just bring that slider scale down. Price is a preference, and there are so many things. And the trouble out there is that for people to discover, it's almost very difficult in figuring out what's the right mix for them. And the other problem is that even if you want an expensive, intense learning environment, and you end up calling 5 people, those all 5 call you back within the hour, and the one same thing they all 5 tell you, my course is the best.
Right.
So how do you trust that opinion? And I think in some sense, right, while it's an analogy from a different industry, I love TripAdvisor, right? Because I can use all these filters to say how pricey I want it to be, what are my preferences. If I connect it to my social login and I read the reviews of people in my social network first, I know, I can sort of relate to them, trust that, and so on. So building some sort of a course advisor is one of the future roadmap goals. But ultimately, we want to sort the discovery and trust issue.
Okay. Right. And how do you solve that trust issue? Because to be honest with you, what I think Sukiru does is gives a very unbiased, unfiltered feedback as to where do you stand, vis-a-vis competition, vis-a-vis your peers. And what little I know, or at least my own experiences, nobody likes to, hear that unfiltered. Okay, it's in the environment of your phone, I guess. So, some solace there. But how do you balance that out? People can get angry, right? To say that, what, I don't agree with their findings.
Yeah, so no, that's a great point, Praful, and it's also complex in the sense that just as an example, some of our users, they want to become a data scientist. It's a hot craze these days. But just becoming a data scientist in a company like Infosys versus say in a company like Google, they're completely two different things.
Sure.
Right. And first of all, we have to use that context to find the right fit. The second, you're right. There are a lot of people who say, I don't agree with the feedback. And that's fine, right? Or rather our only point is take any feedback, whether it is machine driven or human driven, with a pinch of salt. But it's the direction of travel that matters, right? Because if we tell you, to your goal, you are 80% fit, that's great, right? We could maybe be off by plus minus 10%.
Sure.
But if we tell you you're a 20% fit, that means, you have some gap to bridge, whether it is 30%, 40%, that's not so much the point. We constantly keep having this debate on saying, should we express, a percentage fit, or should we say here's a low, medium, high? We haven't found the perfect answer yet, and it's for similar reasons of what you're saying. The idea is not to dissuade people, but try to give them feedback to move in the right direction.
All right. No, it's interesting. I mean, I can see a lot of use case scenarios, but what do you have in mind? I mean, I'm assuming right now you're looking at a B2C kind of a fit for this, but given the fact in terms of what I do, I definitely do see a B2B fit as well. So, I mean, is that the journey that you're thinking of, or you're just taking it as it is coming?
No, it's a great question. Most, if I look at EdTech and WorkTech and so on, whether it is job tech, so with Naukri, or with tech companies like Coursera, Udemy, and so on, everybody started as a B2C play. But we all know that most of the monetization is coming from B2B, and that is where the growth is also coming from. That having said, it's a little bit tricky because if you have people's data and preferences with us, we also have a responsibility to say not disclose it to their employers, right? That having said, I think the market is much larger B2C. Also, people don't have access to such tools in a B2C environment. Whereas if you work with so many corporations, they have the fanciest applicant tracking systems, AI tools and whatnot. Things that as a candidate I won't want to be on the backside of. But our motto is clear that big corporations have all these fancy tools. We want to do something for B2C. And another angle just related there is on the career navigation side. Globally, there are a couple of tools which work well in large corporations, but they are more around internal career mobility. Because when an enterprise is the buyer of a software, of course, that HR manager wants to retain talent by engaging with them. Our goal is to, as a B2C provider, we don't have any hangups. We want to give them both internal career mobility options within their organization, as well as outside to, keep it a wider level.
All right. Interesting. So it's been 6 months down this path, Varun. Tell me, we'll come back to Sukiru, and I would love if you could give us a quick demo. In terms of how it really works, and what can people expect. But tell me more about your journey. 6 months?
Yeah, it's almost 6 months now.
All right. How easy or difficult has it been?
Well, 7 days, 7 different emotions. So, sometimes within the same day, right? There are different emotions. But I think just reflecting back, the big difference, of course, and I was prepared for it, is that in corporate life also, right? You sometimes when you're in a new initiative, you push hard, you try to drive things, try to set up new things.
Hmm.
But in some sense, right, I don't know if it is the top metric, but you also measure personal success at the end of the month by that salary that hits your bank.
Sure.
It's not the same here, right? And so many times, I've had this emotion that I've just had a great day from, an activity standpoint.
All right.
I've had a feeling that I've achieved a lot today. But at the end of the day or end of that week, you think of the outcome. You're not sure if you have achieved too much. So I think the personal motto is carpe diem. It seize the day and, keep pushing hard. So that's been the most interesting revelation for me.
Very nice. Very nice. How does it work for you? I mean, typically these days you see a lot of kids turning entrepreneurs. You don't fit that mold very easily, right? I mean, nobody does, even I do not. Touching 40, over 40, I think this is the time to kind of start reaping the benefits of the hard work of the last 20 years, the career that you've built. How easy or difficult was it to kind of say bye-bye and, never look back?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. And, I don't remember the exact study, but somebody in a conversation quoted this study from Stanford, maybe 20, 30 years ago, which compared, young entrepreneurs versus entrepreneurs like us, right, in their 40s. And I think the 2 or 3 distinct differences are that, when you're young, obviously you can power on for 18 hours a day, chug in a couple of, Red Bulls, black coffees and whatever, and keep going, sleep for a few hours, get up again and, get going. We have a lot more distractions, other responsibilities, kids and so on. And honestly, right, even without those distractions, it's not easy to carry on for those 18 hours any longer. The one benefit that we have in our favor, or rather 2 benefits we have in our favor are, one, we have seen things both succeed and go wrong, right? And that can, by the way, go both ways, right? We could become skeptical and, not try new things, which is the trap I try not to fall into. So, so many times, when I try to reject an idea, I try to think, how would a 25-year-old Varun, look at this idea? So that's sort of, the other way to think about it. The other power we have is, it's our network. So, and you and, others in a similar boat would relate to this, that at this age, it's probably much easier to call people and, get an appointment, write an email to them. That hitch is gone as well. How to, send out that cold email message, get that warm introduction. So there is a lot of power of that. But having said all that, right, the big difference is that when you're in a corporate environment, your first reaction is to hire people. Each time you want to sort of go deeper into something. But here, you're sort of on your own, because one, you are paying the bill, and the second is, at least from a personal philosophy, until and unless I'm sure at very early stages, I just don't want to get people till things are sort of sorted. So that's one big difference, and I try to use more freelancers, gig, and so on, which is which makes things a lot more easier today than it was, say, a few years ago.
Interesting. But that is very different, right? I think one of the bigger challenges is actually the mindset shift, which a large corporate offers, right? I mean, forget about the fancy offices. There's an EA to help out with a lot of stuff. Your day is much easier. There are colleagues you can speak with, have those coffee conversations inside, outside office, have a drink with them. Entrepreneurship in that sense is a very lonely journey, right? How do you kind of keep yourself sane? Because you were just listening and answering to yourself most of the time.
I think it's a great question, because you miss those creature comforts for a few days. You obviously have made a hard call of proving your salary, so you're prepared for that. But what you miss the most is sort of those sort of leveling conversations.
Hmm.
And the other trouble, honestly, is that, while at a macro level, people talk both about the failure and successes of entrepreneurship, which are very widely known, there is not so much on, the journey and how that sort of becomes lonely, frustrating at some times. I have found that having, a network of other fellow founders who are at a similar stage, it's a good place to be, because people are in a similar boat, facing similar challenges as you, and more often than not, you figure out, oh wow, I didn't know others could face the same challenge that as I do. So in short, misery loves company. Those are the three magic words of corporate life or entrepreneurship. So yeah.
All right. Interesting. So tell me a little bit more about Sukiru. How many people? What are your plans?
Yeah, so we are, at a beta stage.
Okay.
We started in January as a prototype.
All right.
And I'm a huge fan of design thinking, trained by
All right.
IDEO.
Okay.
And they have this 7-stage design thinking and prototype. So I could, get on Zoom calls, share the prototype with people, think what they feel with just 8-10 interviews, just, mold it again, make things faster, change them and so on. Built our MVP, did, changes on the basis of that, built our, beta, did the product validation and so on. Made a couple of good discoveries, because when we originally started, the user interviewing said there are 3 objectives that users have, and it's
Okay.
interesting that they keep changing.
Hmm.
One is, job search, other is growth within the same company, and the third is, changing a role.
Right.
In so many environments, right? In that 2.5 month period, we figured that people who originally were, at one objective, say searching for a new job, were suddenly now looking at, growing within the same
Okay.
company, or vice versa. So people keep swinging between the 3. And one of the key discoveries in this was the right process flow. So we have, built something called the value proposition canvas. It's
All right.
a very well-known, framework. And I'll just give you an example there. If Tesla were to build their, value proposition canvas, and it's covered somewhere, the key job to be done is, commuting from one place to other. That's why
Right.
people buy cars, right?
Correct.
But a key gain of buying a Tesla is compliments from friends and family, right? And that's where their brand and proposition and the coolness factor is based on. One key pain to solve is, range anxiety. Will my car run out of battery and so on? And as we all know, Tesla installed this huge supercharger network just to, as a service for that product called the Tesla car, to
Right.
get people, let them get rid of this pain. So we have used the same framework to build our value proposition canvas, and we are very clear on, what value we want to deliver to the customer, what pains we want to take away,
Right.
what gains we want to deliver, and hence what are both our vitamins and painkillers. So that's the approach we are solving. It's ear to the ground, and trying to build a true customer preference driven product, while and I'd studied this in textbooks, done this to a certain extent, but it's all come true now that the customer really doesn't know what they want. So
All right.
extracting all that from interactions, usage of the tool, and chiseling away to, get the right proposition to get product market fit. That's our journey. We're not yet at PMF, but we'll get there soon.
Very nice. Very nice. So Varun, can we see a demo? I'm quite excited with what you've described.
Sure, absolutely. So let me share my screen. So Prabal, can you see the app?
Yes, this is where age comes in, Varun. I need specs.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
So essentially, this is the dashboard screen, and
Okay.
the first thing we ask people is that what is their goal? Is it job search, career growth, or career transition? And
Okay.
like I was saying earlier, sometimes it changes for people, right?
Hmm.
We have discovered that the minute that they either miss a promotion or their colleague gets a higher increment than them. So
Hmm.
many times, career growth changes through job search or a career transition, and in a few months, it sort of comes back to job search. So I'm going to show you the features around the job search path.
All right.
The first one's called a resume sensei,
Okay.
and while right now you see somebody else's resume uploaded,
Hmm.
what I did in preparation of this call is hang on, a master resume of
Okay.
an existing customer.
All right.
A second, and yeah, no, that's what an entrepreneur's desktop screen looks like.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
The other sort of interesting thing while I'm still looking for that resume is it's quite funny on how many screenshots I have of other websites. Just have folders dedicated to that.
I know. Yeah. No,
So what
I
I've
know
just
that
done is I have uploaded a resume.
All right.
This person's name is not Ramesh.
Sure.
That's a mask name I've given it, just to hide
Okay.
some identity, and personally identifiable information is also masked. But
Sure.
essentially, what you saw is that the platform just parsed the resume and
Hmm.
scored it in just 6 seconds. And what it
Okay.
does is it is able to pull out all the information,
Hmm.
including contact information, any objective, professional summary if there was one. It is
Right.
able to pull out things like total work-ex, average work-ex per employer, if it can decipher a management level and executive level from the titles and the language used.
Okay.
It's parsed, what this person has done, where
Hmm.
they worked. The company names are again not real.
Hmm.
So, I've been sensitive to that. It parses the skills of that person on the
Okay.
basis of the resume.
So
And
this picks up the keywords from the resume in terms of the skill set.
yeah, so we are, we use a taxonomy,
Okay.
which is a little more complex in taking those keywords and translating them into skills.
All right.
Because just using keywords, while it does include all these skills, but it's a larger set, and sometimes those keywords are fairly irrelevant.
Hmm.
So we do all that and give some feedback, which is
Mm-hmm.
right now largely on formatting.
All right.
This resume, by the way, is 7 pages.
Wow. Okay.
And interestingly, of all the pilots that we have done,
Hmm.
typically people have 3 to 4 page long resumes, which itself is such a huge red flag.
It is.
And
I
right,
mean, if I were to talk from my perspective, I think anything over 2 pages is something is wrong, right? I mean, you can't be writing so much on your resume.
precisely. And the other thing that we've seen is that a lot of these resumes are not applicant tracking system compliant, which is again a
Okay.
huge red flag, because even if resumes are hand scanned, even then all mid to large corporations, the
Hmm.
ATS stores that information in record and so on. So,
Hmm.
so that's extremely important. The other
Right.
thing that the platform does is you see these scores at the top.
Yeah.
This is our AI at work. We use
Okay.
55 different parameters and
Right.
score the resume in these 4 categories, which are impact, brevity, style, and skills. As
Hmm.
you see that, the brevity score says it
Needs
needs
work.
work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then it gives an overall score based on, our proprietary algorithm. And we are sort of shaping up this algorithm and refining it as we go. But the moot point here is, and we are building this feature further, that people need a lot of help on resumes. Just to give you, one concrete example, one bullet point has to be 16 to 18 words. And we see that, resume bullet points are 4 lines or 5 lines. They usually talk about responsibilities and not impact. So this is one key area that we are going to be focusing on. And we'll build that further as we've discovered that that's a huge pinpoint. Let me show you one or two other features. And Ramesh is a technical head. And since, we saw that he's looking for jobs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Google and search for technical head jobs. Let's see if the one with orange here. This is also fairly short, but that's fine. So I've just copied this technical lead job description with orange.
Right.
And I go into this feature called Interview Boost.
Okay.
So all I do is I paste the job here. It asks me if I want the resume on file, last modified on 22nd June, which is just a few minutes ago.
Right.
And I hit continue. So there, in a few seconds, what it's done is, and don't mind the photograph since it's my profile, but it's given a job fit score. And more than the percentage, the important point is that what it's done is it's pulling out from the job description, things like education level. This one's unspecified, but several times it says whether they require a bachelor's degree or a master's degree.
Right.
And, what industry. As you see, the IT industry matches, it figures the management level, the skills required, and, the entire scoring that you saw was on the basis of, these and a proprietary algorithm there. So the goal here, Praful, is that we tell people two things. One, what's the fit to a job so that they choose, where to shoot. As you know,
so don't spray and pray like people do, right? On the way back from work, they get onto any job site and just start clicking, right?
Precisely,
don't do that.
right?
Okay.
Precisely.
Right.
And I think that one of the key pains that's coming out in our user interviewing is that people have this huge frustration that they never hear back from jobs, right? But you look at it, right? Their applications, they have these 5-page resumes. They're applying to so many jobs. That job application is not custom made. You don't have a good handle on what are the key skills which you have and which you should be highlighting for that specific job application. So while the platforms, still in development, but we have discovered all those areas which are in the roadmap and we are developing those. So the UX UI is completely changing as well, because what this is going to change into is, we're going to tell people about the skill opportunities and also their marketable skills. And marketable skills are skills which you have, and the recruiter is asking. And that's just a great fit using a platform to make the life and journey easy for both. The other, given your industry, other thing that might be very relevant for you, and it comes slightly in the future, is that from the resume, we are also able to figure out, when was that skill last used, and how many months was it used for. So we're able to, we will be able to tell the recruiters that when we go that down that route, we will be able to tell them who's a better fit candidate for you based on recency of those skill usage, context of that skill usage. Because if I used a certain skill as an individual contributor versus, I used it as a team leader versus I used it as a manager or as in leadership, they've got a completely different context. So as we build our AI and our matching further, we have all these pieces of information and we're going to make that matching very specific. So at the core of our platform, Praful, is parsing, whether we are parsing a resume or a job. And the magic happens with the matching. So
Interesting.
those are the areas we're looking at. I'll show you one third feature. We won't go into it, but
Okay.
essentially it's called a career GPS. And what
This is the developmental program that Sukiru builds out, is it?
this is the for the transition goal, and depending on what your goal is. So if this person wants to become a chief technology officer, all they do is just pick it up from the pick list, follow the same process, and get a similar match score.
All right.
Feedback, which you've seen, but importantly, here's where is an interesting thing. We also tell them an industry-wide, role profile, which is what are the top skills across employers for the chosen role. Typical salary, and these are wide ranges because a CTO in a small company versus a big company could have different salaries, the experience required, and so on, and the key responsibilities required for that role. So, like I said earlier, we want to use a lot of data and insights,
right?
And using a lot of AI-driven tools to help people go along in that journey. Early days, but decent for a 5-6 month old startup.
That's interesting. And how are you collating the feedback from users? I mean, you calling them, trying to figure out if this matches. I mean, how's the AI learning in that sense?
Yeah, so great question. I'll stop sharing my screen first.
Sure.
I think the collecting user feedback is probably the toughest.
Okay.
Because obviously people want to achieve a certain goal and don't always have time to give you feedback.
Right.
But there is a lot of elbow grease involved in terms of sometimes over email, sometimes over WhatsApp, a quick 5-minute call whenever you are ready. Sometimes it's at 6 a.m. in the morning. Sometimes it's at 11 p.m. in the night. But that's just how it goes. The trickier part is that taking that nugget of feedback, relating it to what you've heard from others, and making some sense out of it.
You are a non-techie like me, right? I mean, I don't have a technical bone in my body. I think you are from the same flock, and you're running a tech venture. How do the two meet?
Yeah, well, lesser known fact about me is I'm an ex-CTO. How it happened, don't ask me. I think the CEO looked around the room and said, "You seem to be always on your BlackBerry, so why don't you be interim CTO?" That having said, I don't have hands-on coding experience, but like Steve Jobs said in his Stanford commencement speech, you can't ever connect the dots forward. That experience was a boon for me, and over the years, I've built a lot of tech products with teams, and that way, I can work with people in translating business requirements and getting things built. So that served me well, and that experience is coming in handy. Though stacks have changed, that does bring in some learning curve. However, talking about funders, founder to funder, the VCs, they think completely differently, and that's one challenge that one needs to conquer. Obviously,
I'm pretty sure they miss seeing the Steve Jobs speech, right?
That's a good tip. Maybe I should start sending that to them along with my pitch deck
as a precursor. All right. So you were talking about getting in funding, Varun. How is that journey going?
I think it's very interesting, Praful. Couple of interesting revelations there. One that what VCs say on Twitter and what they say in reality are totally two different things. Right. Twitter typically, on Twitter and in public forums, most VCs end up saying, "Get us bold bets, don't get us copycat ideas." In reality, it translates to who else is doing this? Is there a comparable model? Is it one of the themes that others are chasing these days, and hence it's easier to justify and so on. And I'm not saying everybody does that, but quite interestingly, right? No stage is too early. We invest in just an idea, paper napkin. All that doesn't really seem to be true, given that almost everybody is asking for traction, revenue, and so on, especially in the so-called funding winter, and as sort of the environment changes. But the other thing that I've realized is, and while their view is correct, because they represent LPs, and both protection of capital as well as appreciation on capital is an important bit. So I get it. But the other big revelation, Praful, is that say the risk appetite and the amount of money that is put into platform ideas is completely different in India versus say the US. The risk appetite is far more in the tech economies, and an idea like this sees good traction, good validation, good movement there versus in India.
Okay. All right. So it's tough going in that sense.
I mean, funding is, it's never easy from what I've figured out. It's, we unfortunately only see LinkedIn posts of people say it's day zero. We've got, so many millions of dollars, and, life has just begun and it's all hunky dory. But I think what's not talked about most is the people who have not been able to raise funding, or the hard work that people did. Dunzo is a great example. They had to take 42 investor meetings before finally getting that one investment. I mean, Amazon, Bezos talks about how we had to struggle to get 20 checks of, I think it was $50,000 each, and start that behemoth. So yeah, I mean, getting other people to part with their money, assuming it's never easy, but yeah, it's a journey, and I think one has to go through that entire process. And thankfully, some of these end up giving you great feedback and asking you the right questions. So that challenges your own thinking, and I appreciate the process for that, because it makes you, sharpen the axe and go the right direction.
Right, which is interesting, right? I mean, because I think for a lot of people, firstly, you need a mature head on your shoulders to actually take that feedback and work on it.
Definitely. Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned something about looking for some key people, a co-founder, is what I heard.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time looking for a co-founder, but just couldn't find the right fit. But definitely looking for a CTO / head of engineering with good equity participation, and hence participation in the value creation. So, but yeah, looking for people at various different levels, because the success of any idea or any startup, huge factor sort of goes into the people you work with, they challenge you, and help you take your mission forward. A couple of people are already in queue to join, thanks to people I've worked with in the past. So just waiting for the right moment to bring them on, but yeah, there's need to look for other people as well.
Interesting. And what do you look for? I mean, it's a very critical question, given the stage that Sukiru is at right now. You can't afford to make a wrong hire. But then what do you look for in terms of, say, the ideal profile, technical skills apart?
Yeah, I think the entrepreneurial ability, the ability to work in an unstructured environment,
right?
Also the ability to connect dots forward in some sense, while I'm the one who said you can't exactly do it, but at least sort of understand that where this is going, and while you appreciate that you may not have all the answers, but problem solving ability by staying very close to the North Star, which is consumer truth.
Hmm.
So those are key qualities. Very hard to judge. They come out mostly in conversation based on past experiences and so on. And more often than not, right? I think are people comfortable with some of the home truths that you are going into this with, and telling them very openly on what you think, and just not at the face of it agreeing that you'll take a different path. So
Right.
that's extremely important, so that conversation leads
Okay.
you to figure out, are you a good fit with each other as a team?
Mhm.
And yet you don't want people who just agree with you on everything and just want to carry on. I really love some of the values that Amazon has. The two I read together always are: have spine, will disagree. uh, but the one that goes hand in hand with that is that you know uh, I think it's agree and commit. So
Mhm.
have that battle as long as you want, be convinced, come to the right solution. But then when you are on the same page, sort of commit to the cause to deliver the goals. It's
Right.
a little more complex in startups, as we
Hmm.
all keep reading stories where the two founders sort of stopped talking to each other, started
Yeah.
talking to their teams and so on, which is
Right.
a little bit sad because they set out to change the world, but could not handle it amongst themselves. So those fears are definitely there, but you have
Hmm.
to stay rooted to the mission to stay on track.
All right. Okay, that's a fair point. So it's a tough call, right? I mean, how do you find the co-founder? And so look, what we are talking about today, this will get floated in the ISP alum community as well. And should an alum be interested, uh, what do you think this person should think about first before he reaches out to you?
See,
He
I
or
think
she, in fact.
the most important thing is that entrepreneurship is a 7 to 10 year long journey, right?
Hmm.
Uh, it's not like a job switch where if it doesn't work out in a year or 18 months, one could sort of get out.
Sure.
In some sense, right? It's like getting married. You have
Hmm.
to give it that time, uh, and try to make it work.
Hmm.
So that's an extremely important, right? And I think the other very important thing which I considered before getting in was the risk reward ratio.
Hmm.
Because the greater the risk, commensurate the reward, and that's what I wanted to balance out. And that's not just from capital perspective, but also from
Hmm.
an impact perspective.
Okay.
So I think the pain is real and it's quite acute.
Hmm.
In some sense, right? There are 1 billion knowledge workers around the world,
Sure.
and if we do this right, we would impact a large section of them.
Hmm.
So just the feeling of having created a product, a solution that serves the needs of so many people, that itself is quite exhilarating even at the start.
Hmm.
So anybody who has a good tech way of thinking, a scalable way of thinking,
Right.
solving customer problems passionately, they would be a great fit for Sukiru.
All right. All right. That's interesting. That's interesting. How do you keep yourself sane? I mean, you're thinking and breathing and talking Sukiru all the time. How do you unwind?
Well, these days it's a little bit writing.
Okay.
I've just revived one of my blogs and just trying to write as much as I can. That gets the
Hmm.
creative juices flowing. It also
All
makes
right.
your mind think in other directions.
Hmm.
Uh, Earlier, it was a lot of reading, but that became a little bit too much. So now it's
Right.
an alternate form of expression.
Okay.
Uh, the other good thing that entrepreneurship does is it gives you some flexibility to spend time with the kids and
Hmm.
participate in their activities. And while I'm at all this, it's a good time to do all that.
Right.
So, but yeah, strangely, all those things they talked about, that as an entrepreneur, you're your own boss, you have complete flexibility. That's all not true.
That is not true. You're right, because I mean, at this stage, if you're not there, basically the dukan band hai in a sense for that day, right?
Precisely, right? So, in some sense, right, you are under your own pressure to work all 7 days a week throughout the day, at weird times. There's just too many things to do, and you honestly have to prioritize.
Right. So, what are your plans, Varun? I mean, as far as Sukiru is concerned, what are I would say, the short-term milestones that you're aiming for?
Yeah, we want to get to product market fit by the end of the year.
Okay.
And that's a critical milestone where
Alright.
we are able to, definitely solve the, problem for a sizable number of people, and measure with the right frameworks that we are building a product of value. And then next year we want to scale on the basis of that.
Okay.
We are on the right track. We have the groundwork ready. Platforms at a good stage, product roadmap is in place, development is happening. But it's about now getting a sizable number of people through that funnel and prove product market fit. So that's immediate goal.
Okay. I think one last question that I actually had was, what would be your advice to people who are about to embark on their entrepreneurial journeys? What should they keep in mind in terms of, say, the pros and the cons? What should they be mindful of?
Yeah, so I think two things, Praful, and that's a great question. The first one that, while it is tough, don't overthink it. Right. Because, otherwise the idea will never come to reality, and, one might have regrets later. So, and there are going to be a lot of people around you, who think it's not a great idea, thinking of other things and so on. The second is that, there is, the minute you jump in, there's going to be risk. Things will not go as planned. There is only one person who will have a strong conviction about, your idea, and that's you. So I would say, experiment, pilot, run a prototype, go out there and, ask 5-10 people, what do they think about an idea? And start on a piece of paper. That's the cheapest prototype, available. And I think, very importantly, the feedback is extremely important. Because so many times, sitting in our own glass walls, we think a lot about our ideas, but anything is not about how great that idea is, but it's about, will, the right number of people use it? Will people find it valuable? Will they pay for it? Will, you will be able to monetize somehow, and so on. So essentially figure out, what's your idea? Will people like it? And very roughly, right, what's your business model around it? Is this economical? Is this going to fly? And so on. And then set out on that journey of actually delivering these three things, so that people find it useful. And the two other sub points, Praful, are, the one is very important to know, which is, are you building a lifestyle business which is self-funded, or are you building a VC investable business? They're completely two different things, because VCs don't want to invest in every business. Correct. And the other, point that I found a lot of value in is articulation. Whether it is that pitch deck or it is storytelling, there are a lot of good frameworks out there. Right. The 7-minute pitch, 3-minute pitch, 2-minute pitch, 60-second pitch, 30-second pitch. It makes you think a lot. But there is a lot of value in, even before you start, creating these value propositions or these short pitches, so that you very sharply know what exactly is it that you're doing. And if you're there, I think half the job is done.
That's interesting. That's valuable advice. I think very sound advice. Before I let you go, I know you have a very busy day. One last question: what are you reading these days? And I think from an entrepreneurial perspective, because that's what you're talking about, anything that you've read recently which has kind of struck a chord?
Well, mostly blogs these days, Truffle.
Okay.
Because there is just so much information out there. So I follow, something called Sifted, and I found a lot of value in TechCrunch Plus. It's just a great subscription. It's very topical to the times, and it brings a lot of interesting perspectives both from funders and operators.
All right.
And these days they are talking about growth, capital efficiency, hiring and people. And that's a very interesting mix of things in the current environment.
Right.
So it's very practical advice. I mean, I've read variety of those books that entrepreneurs should read, but that was before taking the leap. So they've served their purpose, but now some of these more practical advice is more useful.
All right. And are there any social groups, founders, entrepreneurs getting together? Because I heard of something in Gurgaon, I think.
Yes, there are several. There's several. ISB itself has a couple of entrepreneur groups, and we have found value in creating what we call, super early stage entrepreneurs, just to get a small cohort of some people at the same stage. But the interesting thing is there are a lot of people in their journey around the country, and outside your alumni network, you're able to connect with people. So lots happening.
All right, great. Varun, we wish you all the best. Of course, we will drop in once in a while, maybe a few months down the line, to see how are things going. And of course, anything new that you've uncovered in this journey as you go along. I'm pretty sure every day is a new learning, like you said, new challenges, new learnings, but all the very best to you. And yes, I mean, I'm sure you will get where you want to go. It's not really an uphill task. It's, I think, a lot of perseverance and tenacity. And I guess these two will get you where you want to be.
Well, sure. Thanks, Truffle. And like this is the rolling stone gathers no moss. That's what you have to keep doing. Yes. And thanks for having me here. And I wish you the best with the talk as well. It's a great initiative, knowledge sharing, and I look forward to listen myself and hear from others and learn from them.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Varun. Thanks.
Thanks.